He's done it after the biggest fight in boxing in a while. Terrence Bud Crawford has defeated Canelo Alvarez, making him the undisputed champion of 2 divisions and a legend in his own time. The boxing world is now asking the ultimate question. Did this monumental win against Canelo officially make him the greatest boxer of all time? We're breaking down the flawless performance, the legacy, and where the historic victory places Bud Crawford against some of the sports greats and sports icons. Check it out right now. So last night, Bud Crawford, Terrence Crawford gets it done. It was a masterful performance, a masterclass in boxing. If you are a fan of the sweet science, this was your type of fight last night. 2 of the best ever, and going at it, huge crowd. All the stars are in effect, and it was really something to behold, to see kind of boxing have its moment in the sunshine like this. Terrence Crawford, he dismantled Alvarez as the match, as the fight wore on. It was a masterful display of technical boxing, defense, how he found a way, in this case with his southpaw stance, to kind of find the angles he needed to kind of really get off his shots, get off combinations. He stood toe-to-toe with Canelo right in the middle of the ring a lot of times. He utilized his superior footwork and, as I said before, defensive prowess to kind of evade the Canelo power shots. I think maybe Canelo might have gotten me 3 real clean shots on him all night, and I think 3 or 4 maybe. And I think I think he made sure he had a few grins in this case to say like, that didn't hurt me. It definitely was showing frustration on the Mexican superstar's face throughout the night, as by the time he got to the end of the fight, he was really disgusted, it seems like, with his performance. At least that's what it looked like to me. So how did we get here as far as how did Crawford pull this off? Let's get to more of the tactics of it. First thing, I think early in the fight, first round was really pretty much a feel-out round. There wasn't anything there. For the record, I had it 8 rounds to 4 for Bud Crawford, which would put me pretty much in line with one of the judges, 116, 112. I must admit, I find it hard to believe there was a 115, 113 decision, as we saw for 2 judges. I didn't see the fight being that close, but for Crawford's sake and his camp, they were smart enough to say, hey, man, finish this off strong, even if you felt that you were leading the fight. Definitely on the scorecards, that was still in doubt up to the championship rounds of 10, 11, and 12 in some judges' minds. But overall, how did he pull this off? One of the things you notice, and I was mentioning with my buddy watching it, he was setting up for the left all night. Early in the rounds, he was missing it on some of the power shots. A couple of times he tried a few uppercuts with the left. He had a few sweeping left hooks that just missed. And Canelo did a great job at dodging them. There's good scouting from his standpoint. But overall, as the night wore on, and in my mind, the match, the fight turned to one punch. Usually it isn't always that way, but I think in one punch it set the tone for the second half of the fight, and that was the 7th round. I believe it was the 7th round, where Canelo had him backing up on the ropes. At least you're viewing on your screen on the left side of the ring, and he was coming in for his classic straight right, and Crawford found a way to evade it well enough and get off a stunning straight left. I mean, I don't know if it was a jab or just a straight left, but I think it was a straight left, and it caught him clean. And I think that changed the psychology of the entire match, because what that did at that point was, there's 2 things he had to do. I'll get back to the left in a second, but 2 things he had to do, just to go back to the first part. He had to show he could stand toe-to-toe in the ring with him. And I think the first few rounds, Alvarez did the classic, when you're the bigger fighter, you tend to do, which is try to kind of bully who you perceive to be the smaller fighter around. That he tried that bit, picked him up one time, to kind of show his strength and stuff like that. But I think overall, by about the 4th round, and definitely by the 5th round, I thought in this case here, Crawford has held his own, said I'll be here all night type of mindset. After 6 rounds, I had it 4-2 Crawford. But that 7th round, going back to that left, when he hit him with the left, it caused damage. Not just the physical damage of his eye that was called by the announcers, that that his eye looked like got some swelling from it. It definitely had a psychological impact, I felt, on Canelo, who didn't seem to be as brazen to come in as he was in the first half of the fight after that punch. And after that, Crawford started feeling more and more confident and more, having more and more creativity in what he could do. He was fighting off the ropes a little bit more in the first half of the fight. He wasn't as the fight rolled on. He was still staying toe to toe with them, moving his feet, hitting combos and moving away. And I think the reason why he wanted this fight was I think he saw stuff in the last few years with Canelo, which I have as well too, where he slowed down quite a bit. Even those Triple G fights, the draw in this case, which I think was the right call, by the way. But obviously dismantled Triple G in the second one. But one thing that was shining out in those fights and then moving forward was that he, like in this case here, he doesn't move as well as he used to. As far as his defense goes, he's always straightforward, which is great in some ways. It looks good from a judging standpoint, but if you don't move that head a bit, man, you can get caught quite often. So to me, that was really the left hand was his salvation. You could put it for Terrence Bud Crawford last night. This was also the pound for pound test to find out who was the best guy of his era. So the victory wasn't, it was a definitive answer on that question, who the best pound for pound fighter is today. He moved up like literally 3 weight classes to reach this fight. It was something that's like unprecedented. I think. I think he started at 135 fighting. He moved up essentially all the way up to 168. And I'm pretty sure Canelo did not fight at 168 going into the fight last night. I wouldn't be surprised he was tipping over 170. But for him to do that puts him in a class on his own. And I think we have to look a little differently over time. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But, I'll hold that to later, actually, when we have the GOAT discussion about that. So, Crawford became the first fighter in history to hold undisputed titles in 3 different weight classes. It's an unprecedented achievement, solidifies him as a place as a generational talent, no two ways about it. So, let's look into why. Why he might, if we want to make the argument, why is he the GOAT at this point? I'm not big on these type of arguments, but I think in this circumstance and in this moment, it at least deserves some reflection. Let's put it that way. On if you were to make the argument for Terrence Bud Crawford, why would he be considered the GOAT? The resume is complete at this point. The victory over Canelo gives Crawford a win over a fellow consensus top-tier all-time great. No two ways about that. This fills that last blank or last gap on his resume and elevates him to above many other fighters that are in the GOAT conversation. And if you look at some of his other elite wins, he took care of Porter years ago. I watched that fight. It was a really good fight. Took care of Spence Jr. I must admit, don't forget, people are talking about Spence Jr. in this case here and Canelo at that time. Crawford was an afterthought before that fight in some people's minds. So, Brooke Postol, he's taking care of some really good fighters over the time. And now this one with Canelo Alvarez is like the icing on the cake. The unprecedented versatility. I mean, he's found ways to win fights in different ways. He moved more last night than I've ever seen him move. So I think some people might have been surprised to see how well he moved in this case from a footwork standpoint. He proves his ability not only to dominate fighters, but to outclass and legitimate world champion who is naturally bigger and stronger than him. And instead for jumping 3 weight classes, which a level of skill and resilience that's rare in boxing history. I think, but I will say this: I think this is something we have to look forward to in the future. When you have high-end athletes like this, Roy Jones Jr. being another one who jumped a weight class or 2. You have to think of it this way: it's like if you have the ability to have power, but also have accuracy with it, that is in my mind the equalizer. Even though you're jumping a weight class, as long as you have that accuracy, where you can pinpoint your shots and you can counter in a timely fashion, it will give you a chance in this case against a bigger fighter that's in his natural weight class. And I think we saw it with Roy Jones Jr. years ago, and I think we saw obviously here last night. So I think we have to, and I think throwing in diet, technology, the training nowadays, that it may not be as much of a jump as we think it used to be. So something to keep in mind if we see something like this happen in the future. Maybe we might see more of these type of super fights from different divisions, kind of like almost like you're watching like an old school fight night round 4, round 3, where you're thinking like, okay, let's match up this welterweight with this with this with this junior heavyweight. Let's see what happens when they moved into a certain division or fight each other. See what happens, and we're kind of getting that right now. So on a side note, props to Netflix for putting this together. I mean, I wouldn't say it came out of nowhere, but it felt that way. And, I think, we as sports fans are all, thankful for it. So a great job by them. This time it seems like they got the connection issues and the bandwidth covered off compared to the Tyson fight. So the Tyson Paul fight. So, hey, good job, fellas. Good job. Another thing in this case, why, if you want the go argument for Crawford, is a masterful strategist. He reminds me a bit of like Bernard Hopkins. Hagler's another great strategist. Crawford saw something in Canelo that no one else did. In the weight that Canelo's lost to Bivol, which really was shocking when that happened. Crawford and his team recognized a fundamental weakness that they knew they could exploit, and this wasn't just about power. It was a calculated and strategic masterpiece on how to actually box a true student in the game, finding his opportunities, finding the angles, and using his reach, which I think is the biggest part, because he actually has a longer reach than Bivol, and I think there's certain fights where he wanted this fight for a while, but I think after the conviction after seeing what happened in that fight, he said, "Oh, okay, like this guy here, man, this guy's food for me." And I think and he was if he felt that way, he was correct. Another thing too, he defeated the face of boxing. Right now, the bank right now is with Canelo. He is the dude. After Mayweather, he has been the man when it comes to pay-per-view and getting that money and getting that do-re-mi. And so when he beat a fighter, he didn't beat a fighter. He beat like a symbol of of excellence, of what is considered excellence today. He's the biggest star in the sport, Canelo. And and that victory not only adds a major kind of name to his record, but also establishes him as the new undisputed face of boxing. Like, Crawford's the dude now, and he pretty much could raise check against everybody. He could do a sequel with a rematch with Canelo. I'm not sure how that will look, to be honest with you. I think it might end up being not as. I think it could be. Who knows? Canelo is a pretty good strategist in his own right, but I don't know, certain things there I think are just systemic that I don't know if a rematch will work out well. But who knows? Like, there might be other possibilities. Maybe him and Bivol get together. Maybe that might be a little interesting fight to see who of the Canelo conquerors ends up winning. Since he seems comfortable fighting at this weight class. So who knows? Lots to think of. Maybe he might even move up another class for all we know. So the world is his oyster, as they say, and we'll see what Crawford does with it. The mastery of power and size. The win demonstrated that his boxing IQ and technical skills were so far superior at this point in time that they negated a significant size and power disadvantage. This is a hallmark of a true pound for pound great. I would say that his power sustained for the most part, because even in the late rounds, 10 to 11, and especially 12, I think it's 12 or 11, he rocked Canelo. And that was the first time all night where we saw a fighter with spaghetti legs. Like, he rocked Canelo late in that fight. I don't know. Like, if that was the old school 15, I don't think it's making it to 15. I'll tell you that right now. So I think these are some of the things that kind of consider him as a potentially the GOAT. An unblemished record. Let's face it, he's now 42-0, man. I mean, that zero means something. It just really does. So while other legends have losses like Canelo, like Ali, like you pick whoever you want in this case here, he and Mayweather are two of the few guys in this case that have zero on their ledger. And Crawford's victory maintains his undefeated record, while adding the most significant win of his era, and giving him a serious and compelling argument for a flawless resume against anybody in this case that you want to put him against. He's made a strong case. Definitely the boxer of his era. That's been sealed. Now you kind of start putting him against the all-time greats, and where is he ranked? And I think you could make a legitimate argument he's going to be near the top of the list on that. It was, overall, it was a fantastic fight. I said before, give props to Netflix for what they did. All the stars were out. I'm a huge fan of the sweet science. I'm so happy to see it kind of get its proper due, because quite honestly, besides the 100-meter race in the Olympics, there's nothing else that really gives you knots in your stomach than a huge championship fight. Nothing. No Super Bowl, no Game 7 NBA Finals or Stanley Cup Final. None of it has the same feeling as that. And I love that feeling, man. So it was great to watch. Hope you guys enjoyed it if you got a chance. If not, check out the rebroadcast. Obviously, it's on Netflix. You can check it out anytime. Once again, folks, thanks for joining me. subscribe and like, as always, guys. And check me out on the Basketball Rewind with the fellas, Coach Roach, and of course, Kenyon. And we'll continue to talk about the great sport of boxing, and as well as many other sports down the line. Peace.